Hello my friends, and a very warm welcome back to my painting channel. And in this video we are going to be looking at and exploring a few different ways of painting green skins. So we're going to paint these using a few different color palettes. So we're going to use a dark, a light and a medium tone. So this gives you a bit of a choice and a bit of a mixture as to the types of green skins you would like to paint. So I'm just going to use these Games Workshop green skins that I was given to me by a good friend of mine, and we're just going to paint these up and experiment and play about with a few different types of things. So we're going to start using a scale 75, and we're going to use a despair green on the first one, and this is going to be for the dark jade looking sort of skin color on our green skins. So this despair green comes out in this sort of blue green kind of color, and it's a very, very dark color as well. So to paint this on, all I'm doing is just using a nice thin coat. These paints are particularly good as in they are very thin anyway, so these are really good to use multiple layers and to build up on top of each other and to blend together. I find the scale 75 paints are fantastic for that sort of blending and mixing and things like that. Now once I've covered all of the skin, I'm then going to use Strong Tone from the Army Painter. So this is just a strong sort of dark sort of brown sort of blackish wash. I mean, you can use sort of a Null Oil if you wanted, or an Agrax Earth Shade if you wanted, but with the Strong Tone this is going to be a really, really dark colour, and this is just going to sit in all of those sort of muscle points and recess points. Once that's dry, then we're going to go back to the despair green, and we're going to start to build this up on the muscles. So this is where I'm going to show you a little bit more of the technique and a little bit more of how I'm painting this, to give you an idea as to how I'm building this sort of colour tone and how I'm building the technique through the green skins. And pretty much that's all I'm going to do here is, as normal and as before with things like the skin and the hair, I'm just going to use the edge of the brush, and we're going to use a very sort of controlling sort of technique. So we're going to paint using the tip of the brush, and we're going to build these colours and build these tones up while leaving the darker points just sat in those sort of recesses. So as you can see on the back here, we've got quite a lot of muscle definition and things like that, and we're going to start to pick out all of those bits where the muscle is protruding the most and where it's sort of sticking out the most, leaving the darker areas in between, so down the spine, and as you can see on the face, just around the eye sockets and things like that. And that's going to give us that depth, that's going to give us that illusion of depth there. So we're going to have that dark colour in these recess points, and then we're going to build up through that. So we're going to use 2 parts of despair green to 1 part of jade. So this again using the full scale 75 range. So we're going to use part of this Arpen jade as well. So as I say, we're going to use 2 parts of the dark colour, 1 part of the lighter colour. And the reason for that is because we don't want to go too extreme. We want to kind of build this up a little bit more gradual than normal. Normally I just go sort of half and half, so 1 blob of each. But as I say, we want this to be a gradual sort of transition. We want this sort of dark colour to sort of grow through into having these light points just sort of protruding a little bit later. So as you can see, I have this nice thin paint, and you can already see that that light colour, that light sort of jade, is having an effect on that despair green, and we're just starting to build that tone up, just like so. And again, we're just using the very tip of the brush as well, the size 0 brush as normal, and we're just slowly building and blending this colour in as we go. And again, this is a sort of technique that uses a few different layers, because as we use multiple layers, we're then going to start to grow through. So we're going to use the despair green and our Arpen jade again, but this time we're going to go a little bit more on the jade. So we're going to start to use sort of a half and half, or sort of maybe 2 parts jade to 1 part despair green, you know, that sort of thing. We're just going to build it up gently. Now I've gone for half and half here. I've gone for half of the jade, half of the despair green, and as you can see now we're starting to really pick out that definition in the muscles. You can see that just across the front area here, and especially across the shoulder as well. You can see where we're starting to build a lot of this texture and tone, while we've got that darker tone just sitting through in those sort of recesses, creating that illusion of this muscle definition and muscle tone. You can now start to see that green sort of colour coming through. Whereas we've been using this blue-green sort of dark texture, you can now start to see this jade, this sort of light tone, this green sort of showing through. Now once we've done that, we're just going to use the Arpent Jade on its own, and again it's always important to make sure that you use a nice thin down paint, so just add a little bit of water to make sure that the paint is nice and thin, and the reason for that is because it blends onto the miniature in a nice even fashion, so you're not getting extreme colour. This way you can build this up in layers, so you could do 2 or 3 layers of this tone to get the vibrancy that you really want, or if you just want a subtle vibrancy, you could just use just the 1 layer as well. So yeah, as you can see, again, just picking out all of those muscle definitions and muscle tones, just trying to use the tip of the brush and just blending the colours together in a nice even fashion. It's a nice simple technique, takes a little bit of time to get used to, but once you get there, it's a nice simple technique, it's a nice easy way of painting, and it does have a really lovely finishing effect to it as well. So as you can see, I'm just picking out all of those bits around the neck and just around the face as well, just trying to pick out where the highlights are going to be. Now for the final stage with this one, I'm going to use the Arpent Jade, and I'm going to use about 2 parts of this to a very small amount, so maybe a 1 part of high key yellow. So this might be sort of 2-to-1 ratio. And that's pretty much just to get this jade to really pop now. So we want this vibrancy of the jade to show through. I know you wouldn't think that sort of yellow would be the type of thing to use with this, but this actually has a really stunning sort of glow effect to it. It has a really nice tone and texture. So I found this works really well, especially against that darker tone that we can see through those muscle definitions that I mentioned earlier. And again, by using that nice thin paint, you can just see that we are building this up in a nice even fashion. It's blending really well into the miniature, and we're just trying to be as careful as possible just to pick out the areas that we feel the highlights would be affected the most. So mostly across like the top area of the arms, leaving the underneath a little bit darker, you know, across the sort of cheekbones, leaving all of that darker tone in the eye sockets and things like that. And this way we get in the full level of character out of our model as well. So I've just gone in and finished all of the little bits off around him, and that is our dark jade sort of green skin just there. You can see how lovely all of those tones and those colours really do show through, and that little high key yellow has just had that perfect little glow effect to it. So from there we're going to move on to the second one, and with this one we're going to start with a military green from Vallejo, and this one we're going to make a little bit more of a standard olive colour. So again, like we did with the other one, we're just going to cover all of the skin using this military green colour, so you don't have to be too careful or too precise with this. It's just about making sure that we cover the skin, and then we can build up and move on from there. So yeah, just making sure that we cover all of those skin areas using this colour. Military green is a fantastic colour to build up greens from. It has this sort of mid-tone olive sort of dark colour, and it does dry down to a really nice matte finish as well, giving you the opportunity to build these greens up in a really nice, quick and easy fashion. From there I'm going to use military shaders, so I'm sticking with a military motif through this one. So we've got military green, then we're going to use a military shader. A military shader from the Army Painter is a little bit like Athonian camo shade from Games Workshop. They practically do the same thing. It's essentially just a dark green shade, a dark green wash. So this will sit in all of those recess points, it will sit in all of those bits where we want to see all of the muscle tone and definition and things like that. And then we can rebuild from there, as you can see, which is covering all of that skin in this wash. Again, this is a nice, simple, easy technique, something that we can use to really build and really work towards and really work on. So we're going to go back with our military green once our wash is dry, and then we're going to start to do the same thing as what we've just done with our dark jade green skin, and we're just going to start to build all of those colours back up. So we're starting by building this back up, and the reason why we go this way is by using the base tone. That gives us a really nice colour that we're going to start with. Then the shade will bring down the darker areas and sit in all of those little bits and tie all of that colour together. And then by picking out and building all of these colours up on top, we're then going to start to pick out a lot of the details, and this is where the skin is going to really sort of look a lot more vibrant, a lot more vivid, and have a really nice sort of effect to it. The cool thing we're doing in this technique is it doesn't require massive amounts of learning and skill and things like that. This is something that we can sort of learn overnight. A little bit of practicing on a few heads out of our bits box, and you know, we can master this in no time. And that's great, because this is something that we want to paint where our models look great, but it's also an easy effect to achieve as well. So again, as you can see, I'm just sticking with the very tip of the brush, my nice size 0 brush, and a nice thin paint. As you can see, it's moving onto the miniature in a nice even fashion, and it's easy for me to manipulate and move around as well. So this will dry down into a nice even matte effect again, but doesn't matter because later we'll put a matte varnish on anyway. So then we're going to use military green and medium olive, and as I said before, we're going to go with a half and half. So this is just one blob of each, so this makes this the perfect half step up from the military green that we used originally. And again, we're going to do the same thing as what we've done previously. I know this seems like we're going through a lot of the same sort of thing, but this is the idea, is the more that we practice doing the same techniques, the better we become at using these techniques, and the better our miniatures look for it. So having these little videos where I try to paint things in the same way should hopefully be beneficial to both yourselves watching and to me as well, because I get much more practice in by doing the same thing over and over and over again. And that's ultimately what it's all about, is practicing. You can't paint or learn to paint overnight and be immediately good at it. These things do take time. Practice is the key. Someone did ask me in the comment section before how many miniatures I've painted to get to this level, and the answer is quite a difficult one, to be fair, because there is a lot of miniatures I've painted over the last couple of years, but it all adds to practice. So I mentioned about the bits box earlier. Your bits box is your best friend, because not only can you use bits from in your bits box to use to create sort of different creations or add bits to miniatures that wouldn't normally be there, you can also use your bits box and parts of the miniatures in there to practice with. So the perfect example is the hair tutorial I did recently. All of those heads were just sat around in my bits box doing nothing, and instead I converted them into a way of practicing loads and loads of different hair. And see, that's how it goes. So once we've done the military green and the medium olive mixture, then we're just going to use the medium olive on its own. And as you can see, this now is having a really nice vibrant boost effect on top of that military green base that we were using. And this is now just using a slight stippling effect, and again using the very tip of my size 0 brush just to build that vibrancy on where I would expect the light to be. So we're going to paint this just down the shoulder, across the face, things like that. As you can see, the paint is nice and thin, so this is going to blend into the miniature in a nice even fashion as well, as I mentioned earlier. And you can see that I'm using brush strokes as well across the shoulder, just to kind of create that definition of, or that illusion of muscle tone and definition and texture. And that's a really cool thing to do, is don't forget that the brush strokes that you use can be used to create those little elements of character and those little bits of texture and those little parts to the miniature that you might not normally see. Once that medium olive is dry, we're then going to use half a medium olive and half a goblin green. So again, 50-50, just one blob of each. And we're going to build this up then into a nice, more vibrant sort of olive color. And this is going to be a nice, vibrant highlight then, which is something that's going to create that element and that illusion, as I say, of that contrast between the dark military green that we used in the base, and then building up to this nice sort of olivey green sort of tone. This is our middle of the road sort of green skin. So we did our dark jade to begin with. This one now is our middle of the road. So this is our all-day average green skin. So this is something that you can paint on pretty much any green skin, and it will look quite nice. The dark one that we did earlier would look really good for sort of those big war bosses and things like that, you know, a really sort of nice dark jade color to really separate those special units in your green skin army and really make them sort of pop and stand out on the tabletop when you're playing as well. It could be a really good focus point as well, because a lot of your mates might question what you've painted and want to see what you've painted and really like the sort of effect and style that you've done as well. And there you go, you can see just using this nice green highlight here, you can see where I'm just building this back up. And there you go, you can really see that sort of contrast and that sort of definition really showing through on the model now as well. Again, just trying to pick out some of the parts just across the chest, all those little definitions of sinewy muscle and all these different bits. This nice, simple sort of technique, as you can see. And then from there, if you wanted to, you could then go as well with a final stage and just use the goblin green on its own, and again just build that vibrancy up. You could be a lot more selective with this layer as well and only pick very specific parts, so just around the eyes, maybe just a bit across the shoulders, and you know, as I was saying earlier, just pick in some of the higher areas, so some of the top parts of the arm while leaving the darker parts of the arm underneath, just creating the illusion that the light source is coming from above and things like that. The cool thing, as I said earlier, this isn't a technique that takes loads and loads and loads of time to master. It's something that you can pick up relatively simply and relatively easily, but as always, it's always good to have a practice. It's always good to practice these things and to keep working on these things and build these things up. The more you paint, the better you get. Plain and simple, the more you paint, the better you get. The more models you paint, the more confident you get, and the better effects you get as well. So there you go, that is our olive, sort of medium, middle of the road kind of green skin, and I really like this one. I think this one would suit quite a lot of different green skins as well. I think this is a nice, average, middle of the road kind of guy. Now for the final one, for our nice bright orc, we're going to do something really different. We're going to make this one really, really easy, and we're going to do this in a really subtle way. So we're going to use the Army Painter Speed Paints, and we're going to use orc skin with this one. And this is already quite a nice, light, vibrant colour. And not only is it a nice, light, vibrant colour anyway, we're also then going to highlight it to create a really nice vibrant sort of colour for this green skin. And this colour tone would be fantastic if you were painting things like snotlings or goblins, or, you know, sort of smaller sort of green skins, things that really normally have much lighter, much more vibrant sort of skin colour. Now what we're going to do from there is, once that is dry, we don't need shades or washes or anything like that. Instead, we're going to use sick green, and we're going to use 2 parts of this, and we're going to use 1 part of livery green as well. And what we're going to do is, by using 2 parts of the sick green, 1 part of the livery green, this is going to create a really nice starting sort of highlight to this. And we're going to do the same thing as what we did with the other orcs, whereas we're painting just those raised parts, as you can see in the elbow here, all around the muscle tone, across the shoulder, the face, all of these different bits. So we're going to pick out the raised areas, but leave the orc skin, the contrast paint, just sitting in the recess. So we're kind of using the contrast paint almost like a wash and base tone combined, and then we're going to build up from there. And this is a really cool way of stepping up that green skin from this one. And as you can see, I'm just picking out now with the very tip of that brush, that size 0 again, just using the same brush, same technique, same style right the way through, again just to make this nice and easy and simple and straightforward to follow. And then we're just going to pull out all of those different muscle tones and textures you can see just across the back here. Again, it is important to make sure that you have your paint thinned down with just a little bit of water, you know, a brush or two, just a drop of water would be perfect. And as you can see, this then just blends back into that model in such a perfect way, and it will dry down in a way that is very, very pleasing on the eye, and it will look very, very nice. Once that's done, we're going to do the same thing again. So we're using the sick green, but we're using the livery green just slightly more now. So we're going to use a half and half. So this is 1 tone of each. And the reason why we used the 2 parts of the sick green originally is because livery green is actually a very, very vibrant tone. It's a really, really bright color. So if we put too much of this in, it's going to automatically become a very vibrant, bright color right from the start. So we're going to gradually build this up, because this is a light, light tone. And that's all we're going to do, is the same thing as we've been doing. We're just going to use this lighter colour now to pick out where we think the light source is going to be, and just be a little bit more sort of subtle where we place this one. And you can really see that livery green working now. You can see that vibrancy boost. You can see that pop just across the model. And this is why I say it would be perfect for those little snotlings and for those little goblins, and just to create a really cool, different sort of light, vibrant texture and colour tone. This will be something that would really, really pop on the board. I mean, if you're playing sort of your Blood Bowl, you imagine your little guys with the bright colour and then your big guys in the dark jade colour. It really, really does split and separate them. All in all, that's our 3 done. Nice, quick, easy, great looking green skins, as simple as that. You have to let me know in the comments below which one is your favourite. And yes, if you haven't noticed, or if you had noticed, one of them is smoking a cigar. We had to throw that in there just for a little bit of fun. So yeah, let me know in the comments below which one is your favourite. As always, my friends, thank you so much for tuning in, for watching. I really appreciate all of your support, your comments, everything. Your positivity is amazing. Thank you so, so much. If you enjoyed this video, please consider just clicking the like button and sharing this, so that it helps my little channel grow. Thank you, my friends. Take care all, and I will see you on the next one.